What's up, everyone? Welcome to another live stream. Just getting started here. Just going to wait for a few of you to join, and then I'm going to get into some live feedback. I've got a couple of introductions, a couple of essays that students have submitted that they want feedback on, especially in terms of how to respond to a question. So great to see some people starting to join. We've got our first student here in the house, so welcome. Make sure you chuck something in the comments to let me know that you're here. And I will get into the first student submission very shortly. I'm going to try and keep it a little bit punchier, a little bit more concise than usual. See if we can get through a couple of the submissions that have come through. If you do want any of your work marked, or if you have any questions about your assessments, whether they are next week or 7 weeks away, now is the time to ask. Every week on Tuesday night is the time to ask, because that is when you can get free advice, free feedback, free breakdowns from me. So make sure you're using the link underneath our YouTube videos where we post the live streams. That is the link to use if you want to submit any of your work to get feedback on. And while you're in the live streams, of course, you can ask any questions that you want about your upcoming assessments, how to approach different types of exams, whether it's a multimodal, an essay, creative piece of writing, whatever you need help with, now is the time to ask. Put your question in the comments. Also, please say g'day in the comments so that I know everything is coming through. So if you are here, just chuck a hello in the comments and then I can get into it. That is going to be the activation key here. So we've got a couple of submissions that I'm going to open up for those that are now joining. Should be a productive session, hopefully efficient, and hopefully helpful. Going to look at a couple of introductions. I've gone through them before this so that I can get straight to the point, can give you kind of the biggest takeaways for how you can improve your essay writing, how you can approach your introductions in a better way. But first of all, just want to make sure that everything's coming through okay. No one yet to comment. Guys, please don't leave me hanging here. We need to get some engagement on the chat. Feel free to say hello, or if you just want to ask a question about anything school-related, life-related, go for it. Hopefully I'm not missing anything. It's a lonely start, guys. It's a lonely start. A couple of you here. I'm just going to start sharing and go for it in a second. So do let me know if you are here in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck into it. All right, let's do it. So I'm sure there'll be more of you joining later, maybe not. But for the one or two of you who are in here for a much more intensive, much more intimate session, let's get into it. So I will present this. Let's see if we can get this set up. Let's optimize it. Boom. Now, can I go to the other side? That's the question. I think that's probably the best we can do for now. So hopefully that's working. All right, we're going to get into the first question here, first breakdown from Zach. Question 1 from Zach on the Crucible, in this case, for the common module, text and human experiences. But remember, if you don't do the Crucible, or if you don't even do this module, if you're not doing this module at this point in time, don't worry, because the advice can be applied to other essays, to other modules, to other texts. So question 1 from Zach, thank you for submitting. A text can ignite ideas about collective human experiences that enrich our view of the world. So Zach has written a short introduction to this question, and he wants feedback on it. He wants to know how he can improve. What is he missing? What is he doing kind of less optimally than is ideal? So we're going to get into that right now. So Zach, the question you're looking at here is one of the questions that's come up in the HSE before. First thing we need to do is quickly identify the key terms of the question. So a text can ignite ideas about collective human experiences. So the question, of course, is about human experiences. Some questions will actually say the word human experiences. Some questions won't say those words, but it's pretty important that they've actually added in collective human experiences, because it means they want you to focus or at least emphasize that part. not in lieu of individual human experiences, but as opposed to emphasizing individual, you need to emphasize collective. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't also reference individual, but collective human experiences definitely important. And then it says those ideas enrich our view of the world. Okay, so they enrich our view of the world. So our view of the world is like your perspective. Okay, so we're thinking about how does our perspective change based on those ideas about collective human experiences. So collective human experiences, we can probably drag this out and make it 1. I'm going to take off that mode. All right, so we've got 2 key terms, 2 key phrases. A lot of you are probably thinking, well, what about ignite ideas? Isn't ideas a key word? Well, ideas doesn't really tell you anything. Every essay is about ideas. Every text has ideas. We're trying to isolate the key terms that you should be emphasizing and using again and again and expanding on throughout the entirety of your response. That's what we're trying to focus on here. We're not trying to just highlight every word that could be important. Every word of the question is important. The whole question is important. You need to read it. You need to understand it. Make sure you're not taking things out of context. Some people highlight words and then they use it in the wrong way because they haven't interpreted it with the entire question in mind. But in terms of key terms, I'm trying to isolate the key words here that you should be using a lot in your response, especially in your introduction and topic sentences. So let's have a look at Zach's introductory response here, or his introduction. So Zach's introduction is this: texts have the power to illuminate collective human experiences, offering insights that deepen our understanding of the world. Arthur Miller's The Crucible, 1953, explores the collapse of a theocratic society in Salem, a town consumed by lies and deceit. Many characters contribute to the chaos, driven by self-interest and fear, ultimately spiraling into the town's downfall. Full stop. That's the end of the intro. So there are some positives to take away from that. There is some specificity. Some of the ideas identified are accurate and they kind of get to the core of the play, but we also have quite a few missing elements here. So that's what I want to get into. Let's have a look at this sentence by sentence. So texts have the power to illuminate collective human experiences. Well, I can see that Zach is trying to engage with the keywords of the question there. But if we actually look at that first part, it's really just repeating the question. Zach's just tried to outsmart the question a little bit, which you're not going to. You're not going to outsmart the marker here by using a couple of synonyms. Instead of saying ignite ideas, you've said texts have the power to illuminate. Now, using synonyms for certain words is a good strategy at times, but if you don't do something more than that, if you don't actually offer a specific insight, if you don't expand on that synonym, then it's basically the same as just repeating the question. And that's the last thing you want to do in the very first sentence of your introduction. So even though you've reworded the start a little bit, it's not the right approach. You may as well have repeated the exact words. That's what I'm trying to say. It sounds a little bit better than repeating the exact words because it shows you understand what those words mean. So it's like half a step better, but we need to go 10 steps better. And the way you're going to get 10 steps better than what you've done here with the synonyms is to actually expand on the key words. And that doesn't need to look like a lot of different words, or it doesn't need to actually result in a much longer sentence. It's just a few little add-ons that are going to 10x the quality of this sentence. Okay, because the last thing you want to do is start your essay by just repeating the question. The second part continues to do that. You say offering insights, in other words, enriching, or offering ideas. Ideas, insights are basically the same. Ideas, insights. Offering ideas. You may as well have just said ideas. The synonym's not going to get you that many bonus points. It's basically just as good as repeating the question. Offering insights that deepen our understanding of the world, that enrich our view of the world. Sound familiar? Yes, because it's basically the same as this, right? So it's not going to trick me. It's not going to trick the marker. You've essentially just repeated the entire question, the entire statement in the question, because the question was actually, to what extent do you agree with this statement? But you've just repeated the statement with a few synonyms. Now, that's the last thing I want you to do. That is the last thing I want you to do. And so I'm being deliberately kind of harsh here and critical. It's good that you've used synonyms at least, but that's just kind of taking the essay from, say, an E or D grade to possibly a C or D, but you haven't actually offered anything so far. Now, your introduction does get better. You go well beyond, a D grade or E grade. But honestly, if your first sentence has basically just repeated the question, you haven't offered anything so far. You've just repeated the words that were there. So for anyone listening to this, if you're doing the same, and by the way, a lot of students do this for their very first sentence. If you're doing that, you need to understand that the markers read that first sentence and they're thinking, okay, you can repeat a sentence in the question. So far, you're on the lowest possible band. You're in the lowest grade. Now, this essay gets significantly better than the lowest grade. Doesn't get all the way there for reasons that I'll describe in a second. But you need to understand you are now starting the marker off at the lowest possible grade level. And I know from just reading this and reading the rest of it that you shouldn't be there. But you are making yourself look like an E or D grade student when really, based on the rest of it, you're probably more at the B level and you just need to add in a few more elements. And you can get to the A as well by fulfilling some of those gaps that are there. Okay, so again, I'm just trying to be brutally honest that first sentence is kind of the worst possible start. And I'm saying that to help you. And for anyone who does repeat the question in their first sentence, I'm saying this to help you because I know it's a lot of students. You really don't want to do that. You're better off just not having that sentence. You are better off deleting that sentence and starting with the next part. Because at least now you're going to offer some new insights. You're actually going to tell me the ideas. You're not just going to tell me that there are ideas or that there are insights that enrich or deepen our understanding of the world. So don't trick yourselves into thinking you've done more than repeating the question by using synonyms. That is a key principle. And so many students get this wrong with their very first sentence. You are literally better off writing that out and then crossing it all out and starting with your next sentence so that at least you're getting into some specific detail. You're actually unpacking the question. We'll get into how you could improve that first sentence nonetheless, but at the moment, you're better off just scrapping it. Arthur Miller's The Crucible, 1953. I mean, you always want to mention the form as well. Like, you haven't actually said that it's a play. You haven't said that it uses the dramatic form. You haven't mentioned any features about the genre, that it's a tragic play. And we can put this here as a formality, or you could actually weave in some commentary later on about the fact that it's a tragic play and that actually is important to the momentum and the climactic kind of momentum of the play, right? In the way that there is a climax and there is a tragic end, in John Proctor's death in this case. So you need to tap into the form more. At the very least, you need to mention what type of text it is, which was missed here. But I would actually try and go a step further and just say, yes, it's a play, but it also uses or it leverages the dramatic form, right, to do this. And you actually go on to say how the fact that it's a play has a confrontational element, that it's live, that it's visceral, that audiences can feel the tension because they're watching a play right in front of them. Okay, so you need to tap into the form a lot more here. That was something that was really missing. But you have mentioned the text. You've done the full title, which is good. A lot of students get that wrong. You've got the date, great. And you then say explores the collapse of a theocratic society in Salem. Okay, that's true. It does explore the collapse of a society. Then you go on to describe Salem, and you just say it's a town consumed by lies and deceit. Now, that might be true, but you're kind of missing an opportunity here to actually analyze it. You're more describing the town. You're spending time here almost storytelling, even though you do weave in a couple of key words like lies and deceit. And instead, you should actually be being more analytical. Like, what is Miller trying to convey? Because there is a lot of lies and deceit going on or existing in Salem, right? You've kind of missed the effect of it all. So you're saying what Salem is, you're saying what is there, but you haven't said what the consequence or effect of that, or you haven't said why Miller is representing the society in that way. Why is he doing that? This brings me to another point. You didn't have context. Where in this introduction do we see any context? So it's missing form, it's missing context, it's too descriptive. You're storytelling a little bit versus being analytical. Focus on why Miller is representing certain things in certain ways, okay? Just to be general about it, that's for anyone who is doing the introduction on any text. You should always be focusing on why the composer has represented things in the way that they have. And you should be linking that to form, and you should be linking that to context. Okay, what were the contextual influences here? Obviously, in this case, you'd be talking about the Red Scare. You'd be talking about McCarthyism and HUAC and all of those relevant contextual influences, okay? Anti-communist propaganda in America. The Cold War, right? This is early Cold War when there's tension between, there's ideological tension between the USA and the Soviet Union. Okay, so these are all very important. There's this battle going on. I'm going to just dot point these. Okay, these are things that are missing. Okay, too descriptive, need to be more analytical. You also, to go back to the first thing, needed to have a more specific, you needed a specific breakdown of the question. Don't repeat the question with synonyms, okay? You need to actually expand on the keywords, okay? We've identified those keywords, you need to expand on them. Expand, expand, expand. I'll show you how to do it in a second. So I've literally written a kind of a level up of this introduction to show you guys how you can make simple adjustments to improve the quality of your essays. Okay, so I'm about to show you that. So make sure you stay on here. I've got a different version, an upgraded version of this introduction that's hopefully going to help all of you improve your introductions. So Arthur Miller's tragic play, The Crucible, explores the collapse of a theocratic society in Salem. Yes, that is what it's about. A town consumed by lies and deceit. Where are the links to the question? Where does it talk about the relevant collective human experiences? No links to the question. Keep linking every sentence to at least one key term of the question. Use the actual key terms, not synonyms. Use the actual key terms and plus expand on them. Okay, so in this case, a town consumed by lies and deceit, is it collective deceit? I mean, maybe you could just chuck in the word there. Again, I'll show you some examples of how to improve this, but you talk about the collapse of a theocratic society. What is the collective human experience? A town consumed, a town collectively consumed, a town that is collectively consumed or possessed by lies and deceit. Why? Right? By lies and deceit in the pursuit of or due to what? In light of what? Widespread hysteria, collective hysteria. Now, you don't want to double use collective here because it's a bit clunky, but a town that is collectively consumed by lies and deceit, right, in order to preserve their individual reputations. Because everyone wants to maintain their reputation. They don't want to be called a witch, right? No one wants to be called a witch and then be an outcast, an outsider. So everyone chooses to save themselves by sacrificing others. People call other people witches, even though they know it not to be true, because they want to preserve their own reputation. So their integrity is compromised in the name of their reputation, but their reputation is quite kind of misleading there. It's fragile and it's deceptive, because you might have the reputation of being a good person, a person who should belong, but actually, if you preserved your reputation here, it means that you compromised your moral integrity. So that's the trade-off there. Okay, so we need to engage more with the words of the question explicitly by using the actual words throughout. You need to offer more insight. So you can see that the in order to allows you to have cause and effect. Cause and effect. That allows you to be more analytical, go a bit deeper. Cause and effect. You've got to have the effect component there, okay? Got to have the effect component. Make sure you're tapping into that. Many characters contribute to the chaos. Okay, you're kind of storytelling here again. Like, this is an odd last sentence because this should kind of be summing everything up, giving us your overall argument. Sometimes the last sentence here is called the thesis statement, like the sentence that really encapsulates your whole argument. But instead, you're kind of just offering more description of what happens. Many characters contribute to the chaos, driven by self-interest and fear. Okay, there's a lot of doubling up going on here, and you know how I feel about that if you've watched these before. Try and focus on one term only and expand on it so it's a little bit more specific. You're not diluting each word. You're not just listing things, which is less sophisticated. Try to avoid that, and always use the rubric terms where possible. Even though it's not in the question, instead of saying driven by, why don't you say motivated by? Because motivations is a key word from the rubric. So these kind of things are important, okay? You need to use and prioritize the key words, or not necessarily keywords. You need to prioritize rubric terms. Prioritize rubric terms. That's what I'm doing there with the purple. Okay, avoid doubling up. Look at all the lessons. Look at all the lessons you're getting from this. Avoid doubling up. If you just have a list of these and then go through your own and make sure you're doing these things and not doing some of these other things, and then you're going to be in good shape, right? Self-interest and fear. Put it in orange. That's the doubling up. There was doubling up earlier as well. Lies and deceit. Just tell me the type of deceit. Is it moral deceit, social deceit, political deceit? Maybe it's a mix of things, but it's always better to have one thing and be a little bit more specific. For example, using an adjective like political deceit versus having a list of things like lies and deceit, which are basically the same thing. Like if you're being deceitful, there's an element of lying there, okay? So what was I going to do there? Yes, doubling up in 2 instances here. And then you have ultimately spiraling into the town's downfall. Okay, but you kind of leave it there. There's still the sense that you're just summarizing the story in slightly conceptual terms, like you're saying it's the downfall. But again, you haven't linked any of it to the form. You haven't linked it to the context. Why is Miller actually making this representation? And I don't think you've tapped enough into the so what. Like, what's the importance of all this? What's the significance of it? And that ties back to the question, how is all of this enriching our view of the world? How does this enrich our view of the world? What do we learn from the play? That's what that's saying. What do we learn? That's what's missing here. It's kind of only getting halfway. You're describing and storytelling, and you might argue that you're not storytelling too much because you haven't gone into Proctor and you haven't mentioned specific characters. You've tried to generalize it, which is good. It's a level above that, but you've missed that effect. You've missed that impact statement. You haven't told me why all of this is important. What is Miller trying to get at here, and what's he inspired by, and how has he represented this? Form, context, purpose. We're missing those elements here, and if you actually incorporate those and do a better job of expanding on the key terms of the question, now you're up at band 6. Now you're at the A grade level. There's just a few things you need to bring in. You're still covering some relevant concepts, which is good in these 2 sentences, but really you've only got these 2 sentences so far. So I'd probably say you need to add another sentence and make sure that you are foregrounding your 3 body paragraphs, okay? You've got to make sure that you have actually covered all of the ideas, ideally in order, that you're going to cover in each body paragraph, okay? Make sure that they're woven in there. They don't need to be in each, in kind of like a sentence by sentence order, in the sense that they have 1 sentence each and you're repeating your topic sentences. But by reading your introduction, I should know all of the ideas, the 3 key ideas that you're going to analyze in more detail in your body paragraphs, okay? So I feel like the intro is too short. There's a wasted sentence at the start. You've really only got 2 sentences. You need to expand on those. You need to add context and form and purpose. And you need another sentence as well to kind of get into that purpose point. What's the audience meant to take away from this? And make sure that you've covered all of the body paragraph ideas as well without listing them. So there's a fair bit there to consider, but yeah, it's not easy to get full marks for an essay, and there are lots of elements that need to be incorporated, but we've now touched on all of them. So that's how it could be made better. I'm just going to pause for a second and have a look at the stream here. Still no comments. You guys are quiet. Is this helpful? Please do chuck a shout out. I don't know if it's me and my system here just not seeing it, or everyone does not want to say a thing. Helps when I get a hi or a hello, but all good. If that's not going to happen, we're going to continue on. So I'm going to show you the rewritten version of this. I'm going to show you the upgraded version of this introduction. Okay, so let's go down to it. A text can ignite ideas about collective human experiences that enrich our view of the world. Okay. Texts have the power to illuminate collective human experiences of self-perpetuating deceit. Of, keyword, of, because instead of just repeating the question now and using a couple of synonyms, have the power to illuminate instead of ignite, now we're saying what the collective human experience is, very generally, to cover the whole play. We're pitching this in broad terms, but we are using the word of to force us to do the right thing, which is to expand. The green parts here are expanding on the keywords to prevent you from merely repeating the question so that you're actually answering the question. So the word of is a very powerful one, and you can use that after a key term of the question to force yourself to expand and offer some specific insight that responds to the question and engages with the question rather than merely repeating the question. That is the critical distinction here. So we use the word of, and we actually say it's a collective human experience of self-perpetuating deceit. The more that people lie, the more that the lies continue. So that's self-perpetuating. It continues. Every lie makes people more inclined to lie again because the effect and the consequences of being called a witch in this case get worse and worse. So as the lies spread, the stakes of not lying are higher. Like you're literally going to die if you don't lie yourself. So whereas if a few people lied at the start, but then no one else lies, so the majority of society are not lying, they're not going to kill everyone in society. They're not going to have that power. But if there are only a few people, a few anomalies that refuse to lie and everyone else has been lying, then you can see how it's self-perpetuating because now it's almost impossible to tell the truth. So it continues. It's a paradoxical cycle, spiral, right? And it leads to tragic destruction because the stakes get higher and higher as more people conform and refuse to tell the truth because they're afraid of being alienated in this case. They're afraid of not belonging to the community, and they put not belonging to the community as a higher priority than telling the truth. And that is a tragedy because it's hard to tell the truth when you're going to be alienated from society because deep down within us, we have these tribalistic motivations, primal motivations to remain part of the tribe. That's why no one ever wants to be, sent out from the room. No one ever wants to be alienated from their friends. People always want to fit in, but you trade off freedom, the truth, autonomy very often to fit in. You actually forfeit something in yourself very often to try and be part of a group because you have to conform with how the group thinks. You have to laugh at what the group laughs at. That's what happens here. You have to lie with the rest of the group if you want to stay part of the group. And the reason that we're wired like that is because if you didn't lie or if you didn't conform to the group and then you were perceived as an other, an outsider, an anomaly, and then you no longer belong to the group, traditionally, if we think way back, that means you would probably die because now you don't have a group to protect you, to fight with, to find food with. You're literally going to be stranded in the woods, right? If you think back to kind of those primal days, hunter-gatherer days, if you didn't have a group with you, a tribe, then you are probably going to die because you don't have all those resources to keep you safe. So that's why it's hardwired into us to conform, even though that higher part of ourselves is always challenging us to preserve our integrity, to stick to the truth, because we know deep down that that is the ideal thing to do. It's ideal to live an honest life, a life that's true to ourselves, a life that is basically serving truth at the expense of everything else, okay? But everything in life challenges us to do otherwise, and that's kind of the challenge of life, right? That how do you stay true to something when there are all these forces outside that demand the opposite? So that's what this play is exploring, the tragedy of that sometimes you've got to give up your whole life. You actually have to die to maintain your integrity, okay? And that's a tragic outcome when that is the cost of telling the truth. So that's why we need to defend the truth together and prevent society from getting to a state of chaos that is so grave that If you do tell the truth, you're actually going to be alienated, right? That's a horrible position. So we want to always protect the free expression of truth and just freedom of expression generally, because people have different opinions of what is true. So that's why freedom of speech is so important. And that's why ideology or groupthink and political ideas can be so dangerous, because people then become tempted to just think what everyone else thinks, even if they don't truly believe it, because they feel like it'll help them belong, and they belong to a cause, or they belong to a mission. So that's why I find this play very interesting, because it gets into those ideas. Anyway, probably more information than you needed to know. Just trying to deconstruct an intro here, but interesting ideas that might be able to help elevate your thinking about your text as well. They're the kind of concepts you want to be playing with. Okay, texts have the power to illuminate collective human experiences of self-perpetuating deceit. Now, instead of saying offering insights, you may as well just say enriching, because that's what the question says. It says enriching our view of the world. You're not going to outsmart the question by saying slightly different words, but still not answering the actual question. You haven't offered anything new. You've just used synonyms. So you show that you understand some of the words, but you haven't showed that you understand the question. Offering insights, let's just be honest and use the actual words. Always better to do it, because that's going to force you to add something more, because then you can't blind yourself to the truth, which is that you haven't actually answered the question. If you use synonyms, you trick yourself into thinking you've answered the question, whereas you actually haven't. But if you use the actual words of the question, you can see right there that, oh, I can't just say exactly the same thing. So the answer is not to use a synonym, it's to actually add more specific detail or more specific insights to that sentence. So in the way that I showed you before with the green. So instead here of saying offering insights, we're going to say enriching our view of the world. That's exactly what the question says. We're not going to muck around with the synonyms, but we are going to say what Miller enriches us with. We're actually going to give a specific insight here. Miller enriches our view of the world with. So these words are so powerful. Of here forces us to expand. With here forces us to expand. So always try to be using those kind of words, of, with, between, anything that allows you to expand or extend the sentence and add in something specific, something that isn't in the question, but that actually elaborates on the question, responds to the question. That's what markers are looking for. So enriching our view of the world with a heightened awareness of our moral fragility. Okay, so I've just chucked that in after reading it. I tried to align it with this idea of deceit that Zach was talking about. So I've just put something in that hopefully is relevant to what you're arguing there, Zach. But you can see that by adding the with and saying something specific, now you're elevating the quality. You are no longer repeating the question in that first sentence. And that's sounding like a thesis statement that actually responds and unpacks the question versus repeating it. Okay. Next sentence. Notice how, I'll go back to your original one. In your original one, you just said Arthur Miller's tragic play. Notice how I've structured this second sentence for you. Instead of saying Arthur Miller's tragic play, I want to get into that how component. Like, I really want this to be analytical, not descriptive. So I think starting the sentence with the word by is always a good one. So we're trying to go a level above the previous example, okay? So by exploring the collapse of a theocratic society in Salem, Arthur Miller's play The Crucible conveys, notice here, we're getting rid of the lies and deceit thing, because that was just two words listed together that were basically the same thing that didn't really offer too much insight. But now we can say by exploring that, I get to the effect, I prioritize the consequence, the impact, the purpose, the meaning. Okay, by exploring the collapse, Arthur Miller's play conveys the capacity for collective hysteria. Look at the collective. I want to use at least one key term of the question in every sentence of my introduction, the same for my topic sentences, and more or less every sentence of your essay. But mostly you want to do it in your introduction and topic sentences and links. By exploring the collapse of theocratic society, Miller's play conveys the capacity for collective hysteria, in this case over witchcraft. Added that little bit in. It's not like the smoothest expression, but I added it in because I felt like you hadn't touched on the witchcraft aspect in your whole intro, which just felt odd because the whole thing is about the witchcraft hysteria, a witch hunt. So I think it needs to be mentioned at some point in your intro for this text. To motivate the pursuit of power. So collective hysteria, everyone freaking out, everyone feeling emotions of fear. that can arise, right? And that can actually motivate people to exploit that fear in the pursuit of power. That's what we're saying here. When people are freaking out, people who want power come in and they try to take advantage of it, because people who are afraid aren't thinking rationally. So you can actually leverage that fear to make them do, say, and think what you want them to do, say, and think. All right. So when people are panicking, when there's hysteria, when people are afraid, they don't think as rationally. They're not going to be as autonomous because they're in this kind of fight or flight mentality. Their brain, the neurochemistry of the brain has changed. Now they're vulnerable. And now people who want power can take advantage of that. They can say, hey, you should be scared because there are witches, and you need to make sure that if someone accuses you of being a witch, or if there's someone who you think might be a witch, you need to confess and make sure that you say that they're a witch. You need to call them a witch, call them out. Okay. And people are afraid. They're thinking, but no, I'm not a witch and they're not a witch. But suddenly you're afraid. You think that's what I have to do. You start doing it, more panic. The panic grows. There's more hysteria. So now you're in this paradoxical, ever increasing situation of panic, right? Where it's just getting worse and worse. And it's harder to now say the truth. But yet the people who are exploiting you are getting more and more power because you become more dependent on them. Oh, you're my answer to this problem. That's how people think, right? Think about it. If everyone's freaking out over something and then someone says, don't worry, I've got the solution. Like if you're the court in this case, or you're a priest, people look to you because they place authority and weight on certain institutions. They view these institutions as their saviors, and these saviors they're corruptible. And that means that they can become corrupt, and they can start saying, well, I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm enjoying all this power. People are looking to me for guidance. Now I'm going to start manipulating things. I'm going to make sure that no one speaks out of turn and no one speaks against me. And that kind of that temptation of power, right, is what perpetuates the problem in this society, that you have judges and priests who are abusing their power because they enjoy the influence and control that they have because people feel vulnerable. Okay, so if you spread fear in a society, they're going to turn to someone or something or some institution or the government for an answer. And that means that they get more power and people are willing to do what they say, even if it means that they're sacrificing their autonomy, their individuality, and the truth as well. They might agree to lie, even subconsciously, because they think it's going to help them belong to the tribe and make sure that, you know, they remain part of this community that is placing all their kind of weight and trust in this corrupt institution. Okay, everyone becomes afraid to challenge the institution because then they get called an outsider, and that's what people are afraid of. No one wants to be alienated, as we said. So that's the point we're making there. The next sentence, I've kind of gotten rid of the many characters contribute because it felt like you were just continuing to storytell versus analyze. And you, in a more subtle way as well. Like it's not the clearest case of storytelling where you've literally just told the plot details, but you kind of are. You're not quite there at that higher level of analysis because you're not tapping into the full cause and effect. You're not speaking to the impact on the responder. You're not speaking about the intent of Miller in creating the play. So now I've started with a rubric term here. Paradoxically, in an attempt to preserve their individual reputation or reputations, the characters tragically just taps a little bit into the form there as well, right? Tragically gets us into form. Descend into a collective state of deceit. Sorry, I'll put that in blue here. And notice how, again, we use the word collective. So collective. We're always using the key terms wherever we can to show that we're engaging with the question. I'm not even worrying about synonyms. I want the marker to clearly see what I'm doing. The characters tragically descend into a collective state of deceit. Notice I'm always expanding on the word collective. I'm never just saying collective human experience. I'm always saying something more. Compromising the truth in order to remain accepted by the community. Right, that's what we just talked about. No one wants to be alienated, so they're willing to lie so that they can remain part of the community because they're scared. In this way, Miller draws upon the analogous threat. Analogous means similar threat of McCarthyism. He is representing the Salem witch hunt from the late 1600s because it is an analogy, it is an allegory, right? He's telling an allegorical story, which is part of the form, which you should mention as well, an allegory. He's telling an allegorical story to represent the threat of McCarthyism in his society. So he's talking about how this is cyclical, how history repeats itself, how human nature is the same, and people will always be driven to capitalize and exploit upon fear, the fear of others, so that they can enjoy more power and influence in society. And then it is our individual responsibility to stand up for the truth, to defend the truth, to voice dissent, even when it means we're going to be marginalized and driven out of society by society, right? So this is the challenge that Miller's getting at. But the paradox, again, is that the longer you leave it, the worse it gets, the more the sacrifice. So there are less and less individuals who are going to make that sacrifice, like Proctor. Draws upon the analogous threat of McCarthyism during the Red Scare. So see here, the threat of McCarthyism during the Red Scare, that is the context. That's the contextual influence. That was the part, that was a key part that was missing to elevate the quality of your prior introduction. Now we're getting back to the question. To ignite new ideas in the audience about what? About collective, but not just collective human experiences. I need to say something more. About collective ideological allegiance. So that means everyone conforming to the same ideas, emphasizing the inconsistent value of autonomous thought in the name of freedom. There's a nice punchy end for your thesis, and that is how you can improve the quality of that original introduction, right? Bringing in context, form, authorial intent, responding to the question in a meaningful way, not doubling up on words, using rubric terms wherever you can. They're the kinds of things that are going to allow you to go from a C grade response to an A grade response. All right, well, I hope that helps everyone. I've got one question here, but that's all I'm going to do on the response. I really do hope that breakdown is helpful to you for your own introductions. Let's jump back for a second to this question. We've got an anonymous question. Hello, anonymous. Had a question for, say, a Module A essay. For, say, a Module A essay, should I be using 3 body paragraphs and about 4 examples in each, or do HSE markers not actually care about that and I could get away with 2 bodies? No, you definitely want at least 3 bodies for a Module A essay. You could do that. 4 examples in each would be the minimum, ideally. But if you're a very, very slow writer, then you might have to only do 3 because you want to have a completed essay at the end of the day, no matter what. Try to shorten other parts so that you can get at least 12 examples in any essay, whether that's 3 bodies of 4 examples or 4 bodies of 3 examples. Make sure that your examples also include form and contextual influences. Okay, I hope that helps with that. But yes, short answer is avoid the 2 body paragraph responses. I've seen them work at some schools. Your teachers will tell you if it's okay to do 2 bodies for an assessment. For the trials and for the final HSE, I would be doing 3 bodies for any single text essay, pushing for 4 for a comparative essay like textual conversations. But to be honest, sometimes it is just easier to do 3 for Module A with the textual conversations. Do your first paragraph on the first text, your second paragraph on the second text, and your third paragraph as a combined one, because that is going to be more realistic with the time that's given. And it's going to allow you to go into a little bit more detail for each paragraph versus rushing through and only saying a couple of things for 4 paragraphs. So I would go for 3 if there is any issue there with speed and timing. 3 paragraphs for each one. I would avoid doing 2 in most cases, unless you're a really slow writer again, and that ends up being the best way for you to compare the 2 texts. But go off your teacher's guidance for that. For the internal assessments, some teachers will ask you to definitely do 3 if you want to go well. Otherwise, they might view it as unfinished. So always be guided by teacher advice for your internals. For the trials and HSC, in terms of what I've seen work and get what I've seen work for students who get top marks, which you should all be trying to replicate as much as possible. Even if you're, someone who gets 10 out of 20, you should be looking at what people who get 20 out of 20 do, and just do as much of that as you can, even if you know you're not going to be able to do all of it. And what they all certainly have is length to their essay, and almost every state rank achiever I've spoken to has at least 3 body paragraphs. A lot of them just stick with 3 body paragraphs for their essays. So I hope that helps. That's the only question we had today. I'm going to jump off. Was trying to keep this a little bit shorter and sweeter. Not sure if I achieved that, but I hope that did help in terms of a breakdown. If you have responses that you want broken down, please submit them using the link below our live stream recordings on YouTube. There are links there that you can use. And also, if you need more help, study guides, you want your essays marked by our team, right? Unlimited feedback as well. Go to JeddAI. So go to Jeddle.com, and that is on there for you. So I do encourage you to check out, excuse me, Jeddle.com for study guides and access to essay markers so that you can get those in tip-top shape. Okay, Jeddle.com for those. Ava's got a question. Hi, since there are so many characters in the play, doesn't matter how many you talk about, pairing two characters to support each paragraph idea and flesh them out, or does it not matter? It is important generally to have some diversity in your evidence. So speaking about more than one character is ideal, of course. That is going to be something that markers will look at. But you definitely shouldn't make each paragraph character-driven from the sense that you're placing the character as the number one thing for that paragraph. It's the idea that's the number one thing as the paragraph. And then it's good to have a go-to or preferred character for that idea. Like, for instance, in The Crucible, when you talk about rebellion and sacrifice, John Proctor is such a good character to draw from. So you might focus your analysis and examples on Proctor. Whereas when you talk about corruption, say in the second paragraph, you might want to just talk about the judges and the priests. Okay, so it is good to find different characters to suit different ideas in your paragraphs. But remember, the character doesn't come first, the idea comes first, and then the character backs them up. But yes, try and choose, I would say at least for most things, 2 to 3 characters. I would go for 3 in the sense that in one, if you have 3 body paragraphs, you have 1 preferred character for each of them. But there's a good chance that for some text that you do, there's really just 1 main character and you might only have a couple of references to other characters. But I would definitely say that's something that will help differentiate you if you kind of try and find evidence from maybe characters that are less popular for a particular text. If you can find good examples from them that prove the same point, that's going to help set you apart. So try and look for examples that back up your point that are from less popular characters, because naturally that's just going to stand out and impress the marker a little more. But I would have 1 main focus character to support each idea in your body. But again, that's not my number one kind of factor. That's not the number one consideration. It's what are the ideas that best match the progression of the text? And then what are the best examples? And then can I diversify them a little bit by having, at least say 3 characters across my essay. I don't need to bundle them all together. You can talk about 1 character in every single paragraph. You don't need to be too rigid about it. But yes, having some diversity is one of those factors that you might consider when you're trying to give yourself an edge over others. So really good question. Okay, Jeddle.com if you need any more study guides, resources, analysis to help you build your essays, expert marking available. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. These are weekly. If you have drafts, I know that the quantity is going to get higher and higher. So get in sooner than later, because I'm not going to get to everyone's. Already there's more and more submissions coming through as you start to prepare for your first assessment this year. Get your responses in if you want to be prioritized in the live feedback sessions. Maximum of 1 paragraph though. Don't send me a full essay or I won't look at it. Just not enough time to go through it. So 1 paragraph with a question or prompt. It could be an essay, could be an imaginative, discursive, persuasive. Keen to do some Module C feedback for all of you as well. So use the link below the live stream post on YouTube on the Jeddle channel and submit little chunks of writing that you're doing over time. If you want feedback on it, first in, best dressed. It's definitely a priority in terms of getting it in sooner. Every week, Tuesday, 7:30. Check Instagram for any changes. Make sure you're following Ask Jeddle on Instagram if you want to keep up to date with events like this. But generally speaking, I'm trying to be on here every single week this year, 7:30 p.m. Tuesdays. All right. Great to see everyone. I hope you're enjoying a lot of the content on the YouTube channel. We're trying to post a lot more quality content for you, interviews with state rank achievers so you can understand exactly how they approach the year. We're also posting a lot of how-to content based on popular requests. So, we're putting a lot more time. I'm putting a lot more attention into those videos, how to study more effectively. What are the tricks there? How did I do it? How have I seen others do it? How to write topic sentences. I just released a video with broken down examples on exactly how to write a band 6 topic sentence. There are examples based on a text that I look at. You're crazy not to look at that. That's literally every step, every little element you need to know for your topic sentences, which is one of the most important parts of your essay. So please make the most of the resources that we're putting out there, whether it's on Jeddle.com for the analysis and the exemplars or the YouTube videos. Good luck, everyone. Hope to see you soon. Back next week, 7:30 Tuesday.